We're joined today by Sam Rodriguez, the CEO of Future House. Sam was just named one of Time Magazine's most influential people in AI. Congratulations. Not to be confused with the subgenre of music, Future House is a nonprofit that's building AI scientists. We're also joined by Aditi Krishnapriyan. She joins us from across the bay, UC Berkeley, where she has a 50-50 appointment between chemical and biomolecular engineering and electrical EE and CS. Her work focuses on developing physics-inspired machine learning methods. We also have with us today Mike Abbott, the co-founder of OpenAthena. They're partnering with academic labs to build better AI models with the goal of doing more science. Mike holds the distinction of being the first head of engineering at Twitter, where he and his team got rid of the fail whale. And he was also VP of engineering at Apple, oversaw the development of Azure at Microsoft, and served as an EVP at GM. He's also been on the investor side. We have such an academically distinguished panel here today. I'd like to begin by asking each of you to reach into your pocket, grab your crystal ball, and tell us what's the next scientific revolution and what's AI's role in it. Let's start with Aditi. What are you seeing in your laboratory at Cal?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting time, just like every other field, because we're seeing people are seeing the importance of data generation. I think that was something that a lot of people were holding out on the scientist side. There was this idea that, is it the algorithms, is it the data, is it something else? And it's a combination of all these things, but I think the data is really key, and we're seeing some massive data and generation efforts in AI for science now. I think the biggest thing I'm also seeing is a shift in people that are not on the AI side, that are more on the science side. They're willing to think about how to evaluate these models, how to make very rigorous benchmarks for these models. That was something that I think has taken some time and iteration, but we're finally getting and converging towards the same languages. And so on my end, one thing we focus a lot on is developing these new machine learning methods that are catered towards problems in the scientific domains, like how do we represent molecules, how do we think about how to do these scientific simulations across really big spatial and temporal scales. And I think we're finally at the stage where these methods are starting to join with the infrastructure and also then the domain adaptation from actual scientists, since at the end of the day, those are the people we want to use these methods.
Wow, thank you. And Sam, how about Future House? Future's right there in the name. Plus, you've worked on superintelligence at MIT, which does sound like a Wile E. Coyote business card. But what do you see as a future?
Yeah, so the next revolution in science is a revolution in the way that we do science, right? Which is, and like AI is at the heart of it, right? So what we will see is that in the next handful of years, 2 years, 3 years, something like that, the way that we actually the day-to-day process of doing science, right? The day-to-day process of like doing literature search, doing data analysis, doing hypothesis generation, doing experiment planning, and so on, will become fully augmented by AI, if not fully automated by AI, right? And this will allow us to explore the set of hypotheses and the set of discoveries way more efficiently than we can today, right? So I think the way to think about this is there are huge amounts of data. We have in the past 10 years, especially in biology, we have exponentially increased our ability to gather data, right? Which means that there should be many, many discoveries that are sitting there waiting to be made, but we don't have enough time to go and find all those discoveries. With AI, our ability to mine existing data sets for new discoveries will increase dramatically, and that will just rapidly increase the rate of progress.
That sounds exciting. And how about you? Mike, what do you think?
Well, let me first give a little more background on OpenAthena. So OpenAthena is a nonprofit, and we hire engineers from various frontier labs, and we actually deploy those engineers into various academic labs that are working on scientific foundation models. Because one of the things that we've seen is that there's a challenge in academia at times where they're sometimes lacking, let's say, professional software engineering expertise to build these large scientific foundation models. So we have projects in material science, weather, plant genomics, across the board, across 15 different universities that we're doing this with. So we have, like, our view is that a lot of the work right now that's really what we're seeing important is on the post-processing side versus kind of on the pre. We walked into, when we first started Open Athena with one of my other co-founders here in the audience, we thought actually compute was the big problem in academia. But it turns out that if you go to a CS department, yes, they're gonna say compute, but when you go into a chemistry lab or you go into physics, the issue is actually not so much compute, but it's actually how to work with large scales of data. And so many of the engineers at Open Athena are focused on that problem of helping us advance science across all those different domains.
Working sort of in parallel with different universities, are they also collaborating in some way to share some of this?
Yeah, so there's an oceanography project that we're helping with that spans MIT and NYU. And we're talking to Didi to hopefully build a partnership or relationship between Princeton and Cal. But again, it's really between the PIs. But one of the things that we can do as being outside of academia is help foster some of these things, because we're not under the gun to go publish at all. We're just trying to actually help.
That's great. Thank you. I think everybody will thank you for that. Sam, you've talked about the bottleneck in science, which, if I understand correctly, is that there's simply too much information. Is that the bottleneck that you've mentioned?
There are several bottlenecks. That's certainly one of them.
And so with a product that can analyze research paper and respond to scientific questions, tell us what you're seeing in this area of managing that bottleneck and how AI might help scientists.
I can probably provide like a pretty specific example to try to bring this home to people. So there is in 2004, there's a drug called leucovorin, okay, which is folinic acid and basically is approved for a condition that I'm currently blanking on, but it's not important. In 2004, it was identified that some percentage of patients who have autism have antibodies against the folic acid receptor. And it was hypothesized that a deficit of folic acid may contribute to autism, and that it might be worth like trying leucovorin, folinic acid, which has a similar physiological effect, doesn't rely on that receptor, in order to supplement those patients. That was 2004. What happened after that? Nothing. Nothing happened until 2018, when there was a clinical trial that was conducted for leucovorin in autism that showed that when you give leucovorin to patients who are nonverbal, to autism patients who are nonverbal, within a handful of days, some of them begin speaking again. Okay, clinical trial, 2018, like phenomenal results. What happened after that? Nothing. Okay, until it was like last year or the year before when another AI drug discovery organization called EveryCure, using their AI, resurfaced this hypothesis and started to be very vocal about it. And then remarkably, I saw the other day that RFK Jr. was actually talking about leucovorin for autism. And it's like going to be in one of their recommendations that they put out for treating autism going forward, which is like pretty incredible for a drug that actually probably has a huge potential to help people, right? Rediscovered because of AI, right? Neglected because there weren't enough people thinking about it, because like there was literally not enough human thought going into it. Rediscovered with AI. Those are the kinds of things that we want to see, right? The opportunities that are hiding in plain sight, where by rediscovering them, we can create huge amounts of value, cure diseases, make a lot of people's lives better.
I hope you do. Aditi, you're working at the lab level to develop new ML methods. Where does the research in machine learning sit right now at Berkeley?
The research at Berkeley, I think, is actually a really fun place to work on the intersection of AI and science. I think one really nice thing is that all the departments are very strong, and so that means that we have this nice setup across the whole campus. Our group sits in particular within the AI group at UC Berkeley, so this is Berkeley AI Research, but they have very immediate access to people in physics and chemistry and chemical engineering and all sorts of different departments on campus. So I think that's made it very easy to think about how do we develop these new methods, but do this in such a way that we're really targeting very like realistic scientific applications. We're not just doing something in a bubble, but we can come up with methods that we can then go and directly validate with people who are just in the next building over.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, sure. One example I'm quite excited about recently is, so there's been a lot of progress in recent years with machine learning for atomistic modeling. So atoms are the building blocks of life, of course. So proteins, molecules, materials, these are all defined fundamentally by how atoms shape together and how they pack together. And one of the fundamental challenges in many aspects, for example, materials design, is how do you simulate these systems to really large sizes and across very long time scales such that it's going to actually match up to what we see in an experimental lab and can create in an experimental lab. And one result that we have recently is we've taken this idea of very large-scale models that are increasingly developing in this field and have come up with a way to do something called a model distillation approach. So this is taking a large model and you transfer the knowledge into a much smaller, more efficient model that's very catered to a specific area of science. And so by doing this, we can really unlock new timescales that are just much faster than what we've seen before. We've done this with electrolyte materials, which are really important in batteries. And this is something that we now have very recent results showing that experimentally, some of the results that we're seeing in simulation are matching up with our experimental collaborators who are measuring this in the lab. And this is something I did not think would happen this soon. I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, this felt like it was very far off, and to see it now happening, I think is just a result of the incredible progress we've made, both on the data side, but also new models and methods that can take advantage of this.
I think that's a great place to come back to you, Mike, and talk a little bit about this AI revolution. And you've been in technology for a little while and seen several revolutions. What are some of the things that you're seeing on sort of on the horizon from all of your different vantage points?
Well, I think, at least in the area of science, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the eval side of the equation. And what I mean by that is, like, we look at these different domains that are very difficult to validate these models. I think that's the area that over the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of advancement needed. It's one thing if a drug is discovered, even on the drug side, like if you take EVO2 or any of those types of models, you can do a lot of really interesting things, and you can accelerate, let's say narrow down the search space of your laboratory experiments, but there's still that, in that case, like a wet lab kind of eval. And so, you know, we're seeing that across different fields, there's different levels of advancement, but this is going to be paramount for us to be able to understand how do you actually, you know, score a particular model, a particular field, so you can actually understand when you're advancing it. And again, across different domains, we're seeing some are more mature than others. And I think that's an area of science in particular that I'm very, very fascinated about. We also believe that all this work in science should be done out in the open. And you know, we're hoping that, obviously on the academic side, it's in the open for the most part, but we feel like it's even more important right now because of the changing in the funding kind of world, that for the US to stay kind of on the edge, that we need to be working together across these different institutions. And we're hoping at Open at the end that we're going to foster that.
What are the challenges to remaining open source? Because it does look like some of these big companies have gone back on their open source mandate, and I'm curious, what happens in these situations? What's the decision, and do you come up against this challenge regularly?
So we have a rubric that kind of identifies who are the PIs, or the researchers that are good for us to work with. And like Aditi, researchers who want to work in the open, believe in open science, are great partners for Open Athena. If there's an inclination or a desire to commercialize that project, that's not a good fit for us. And I think that is one of the challenges in academia right now, is that there's so much money, so much capital going into starting these companies there's this kind of pull between keeping some of your research maybe pulled back to spin that out versus publishing. And so we're trying to find, again, those PIs that believe in on the kind of the, we'll say, the open nature of research and really try to help them.
Thank you all so much, the three of you, and thank all of you.
For hosting.
Thank you.